Hello, 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 ladies and gentlemen. Hello. They say past performance is an indication of future performance, right? We've all heard that before. The sun keeps rising in the east. I think it's the east, right? Soul provider, Eisen, keeps rising in the east, setting in the west. So we kind of assume that it's going to keep on doing that, right? But perhaps past performance indicates much more when it comes to human beings. Perhaps it's an indication of things that we can talk about, such as motives, in a world where we must discern real intentions, where intentions may be hidden, right? Perhaps it's an indication of habits, character, perhaps, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome, welcome to my channel. I'm Iko Gammon, and over here we talk about being better and doing better with a strong emphasis on doing. And what are we doing today, ladies and gentlemen? What are we doing today? We're having a conversation with the man of tomorrow. Well, a man who has, achieved a great deal of success in his life, a man with much experience and much to share. And we're going to look, if you will, at the track record, right? A fitting title if you are at all familiar with his content. And I see that Doug is already putting the link to his channel in the chat, right? To learn about his experiences, his journey, and see what we can learn about the subject, how to use track record as a way of making sound decisions. So, man of tomorrow, how is it going, sir? Can we check out your volume there and your audio?
How's about now? Can you hear me?
Yes, 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 I can. I can definitely hear you. How are you doing, sir? Thank you very much for joining us today.
I'm doing well, man. Yourself? Thanks for having me
Not
on.
bad. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. So let's just get a particular thing out of the way. Why Man of Tomorrow? Why that particular moniker, Man of Tomorrow? Does it have something to do with what message you're trying to get across? Does that have something to do with the message in your channel? And if so, what is that?
Yeah, I mean, like what's basically is that we already understand how the man in the past actually done things, and you have to rise above those actual challenges from yesterday. You see, coaches are supposed to hand down by they're 18 years old. They're supposed to pass down their 40 to 60-year track record to kind of combine it into what is created as a son or daughter. And you can't really do that as a woman of tomorrow because we already have the woman of tomorrow right now. We see what it is, being guided by unfeminine things for their own power. But see, men have never been on a timeline to where they have their own set of power outside the woman's power and control. So that's what Men of Tomorrow is about. It's about a movement of people moving past Black culture. If you're good at Black culture, you're definitely not going to be good at anything else in real life or business. So that's why you have to move beyond these type of cultural things, because otherwise you're going to be talking about nonsense for the rest of your life. Because you have to maintain the woman's control inside the society itself, and you can't do that and actually move forward as a human being. You can only move yourself back into those people's power and perspective because you haven't built any of your own. Because she is the actual end goal for these guys, not really anything.
I see. So we've seen how the man of the past has done his thing, and then you ended up by saying we've seen what you're saying what his end goal is, which is
Right.
she is the end goal, and that is not a when it comes to a positive program, you cannot have that as a positive program. It is rather intangible. It is rather, shall we say, superfluous. It is fleeting. It is the words come to mind such as finicky and so on and so forth. In other words, you cannot have a positive program as a man with tangible results if it's based upon, well, how many women in the environment can I exploit? How can I give them what they want? How can I be a dancing monkey for their purposes? So your program is here is the positive program with actual tangible outcomes, right? For the man of tomorrow. Is that a fair enough paraphrasing of what you just said? Oh, MOT. Do we have audio issues? Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, let me go ahead and check out the super chats and what's going on in the chat over here. Greetings, Chuku Igwe, Rayhana in the house, Doug in the house, Eisen Sama in the house, the Unspecialist in the house. We got Soul Provider in the house, Sigma Jones in the house. We got Snuggles in the house, okay? We got a fair representation of various cohorts in the house there. We got Snuggles representing the $5 kingdom. We got Soul Provider coming in with the nerd pill. Salute, salute, salute. And let's go ahead and share the $5 super chat here. I think Snuggles, someone beat you to it. Someone beat you to the $5 super chatting, and I'm gonna go ahead and share that, and that will be Mr. Eisen Sama. Let me share that right there. Says, for the track record, I know this is going to be a good one with you, Iko Gammon and Omni-Man of tomorrow. Can't wait to see. Okay, can't wait to see how this will go. So, Man of Tomorrow will be with us. I'm sure he's gonna fix the camera issue, the microphone issue, the cell phone issue, whatever it may be. But remember, we said that track record is important. And the track record is important beyond just an indication of future performance, but it is a way to discern whom should I listen to? Whom can I take seriously? What are indeed the motives, the habits, and the character? What is, if you will, the character of the person that is giving me said information, and so on and so forth, that's trying to lead me down a particular path? What is their track record, and what kind of things can I glean from that? Shout out to Snuggles in the house. Shout out to Snuggles in the house. Says, hello, guys. How are you all doing today? I will be listening attentively from below. To hear what the voice is up high has to disseminate to the masses. Yes, and I'm getting better at reading your punctuationless and rather deceitful way of writing there, Snuggles. But your $5 super chat, kingdom, queendom, or whatever it may be, is intact. Shout out to Aaron B. Shout out to Aaron B in the house. You just showed up. So, when it comes to track record, and when it comes to being able to discern whom to follow, the principle of exclusion and inclusion is very important. Whom do you include amongst your circles, and whom do you exclude? Because we all know the thing about, well, no one is an island, right? You can't go it alone. You want to go far, go together. You want to go quick, go alone, those kinds of things. We have all those cliches out there. People are social animals, so on and so on and so on. However, what are the ways in which people can help you and hinder you? Well, you can put one category called, let's say, the inspire or teach category, right? So, Black Girls, Snuggles, shout out to Zero in the house. We've all had perhaps that one teacher, right? Let me get a one in the chat if you know what I mean by that one teacher that has inspired us in a particular way that they may not even know. They may not even necessarily know how or what they did, but there was something about them and something about something that they did, how they looked upon you, one thing that they said one day that is completely, for all intents and purposes, changed the trajectory of your life. So you can have this in the inspire category. Would you not like to have more of these kinds of people in your life? Then in that inspire category, you have the opposite, right? You have the naysayers. You have the people who say, oh, well, no one has ever done this like that before. This will never work. The people who always complain. The people who always want to waste your time and so on and so forth. And then we have the teaching category. Okay, I use the teacher example, but using him for the inspire example. But people from whom you can learn. And shout out to Zero before I miss the super chat, before I continue here. Shout out to Zero for the super chat. Says, chicken sandwiches have an excellent track record. Yes, you see, the chicken sandwiches don't fail. Chicken sandwiches always work. A grilled chicken sandwich, a fried chicken sandwich, in between a ciabatta bread, in between some nice Hawaiian bread. Maybe it's a little sweet. I don't know. Maybe you like chicken sour. Maybe you like it in between your sourdough bread. But chicken sandwich does not fail. The chicken might even be dry, but you throw in a little bit of what's your sauce of choice, you know, in the bread there when it comes to chicken sandwiches, okay? Chicken sandwiches have a track record. Just like the sun will rise tomorrow in the east, a chicken sandwich will be sold somewhere in the world. Ain't that right? So, when it comes to working with people, we talk about the fact that you cannot do it alone. We talk about the fact that you're not an island. You talk about the fact that man is a social animal and so on and so forth. But we're trying to break down certain categories here of people that help. How does one go about interfacing, interacting, engaging with people such that it may be of benefit or it may be to your detriment? Okay? We talked already about the inspire people. And then there are the teaching people, the people from whom you can learn something. They might be on YouTube, they might be members of your family, and so on and so forth. And this learn thing is also a double-edged sword. Okay? The learn thing is also a double-edged sword. All right? And by the way, I'm not gonna come for MOT. This is not a shot at MOT, but we all know about the MOT level audio audio malfunctions and so on and so forth. And I think he is staying true to form. His track record is not failing us today because when you have MOT around, hey, you know, you might have some audio stuff going. Something might drop out. You know, he might have to stop in the middle of the stream to take a phone call about the transportation of vaccines from Colorado to Milwaukee or something like that. That's just kind of how it goes. That's how it's expected to be. We build it while we fly it. We roll with the punches, don't we? So the teaching aspect has two sides to it. You can learn, okay? Hey, MOT, can you say something?
Yeah. For some reason, I was getting a call about Verizon 5G going off, and and it's already offline, like my phone and everything. So now I'm on a AT&T tablet, so we can keep rolling.
Excellent. So yeah, I was talking a little bit of smack. I was like, you can't have MOT on without a little bit of audio glitch or something like that. But you know, it's all good. And the man of tomorrow will be here tomorrow. That's a good one. That's a good one, D. So let me
Not today.
it's the man of tomorrow. I mean, come on. Like I told you, what do you mean? What was the confusion about, Ike? I'm the man of tomorrow. So I like what you said there in the beginning, which is, you know, a positive program for the man of tomorrow. Now, was this something that you've always, so because I know that you've been in the YouTube space now for a while. When you chose that name, this was the program, the idea that you had in mind. In other words, this idea of the opposition of the man of yesterday, and also the fact that the man of yesterday has done things in a certain way, which is ass backwards, meaning he puts women as the target, as the goal. Therefore, he really has no goal because, you know, for reasons which we understand, right? So is this the aspiration, the raison d'etre, the idea, the impetus for your channel, generally speaking, ever since the inception?
Yeah, it has been. I mean, because making sure that this person has no power in society over me or otherwise, it's been a lifelong goal. But it's just that once you come back, you start to have real disdain for people who still allow the end goal of the woman benefiting to actually control their every movement in society. And they actually want other men to bow down to the impetus itself. So it doesn't make any sense.
Okay, so let's shed some light on your background, because you just mentioned that this has always been a life goal of yours. You know, where were you raised and how were you raised, if you will? Just a little bit of that background information there.
I mean, I was raised in rural Mississippi, where there were like definite, overwhelming consequences for men who actually didn't do what they were supposed to do inside the environment. You know, they're definite. You know, especially while my grandfather was alive, my father was alive. Yeah, there was definite hands-on consequences whenever men kind of stepped out of line. This is why, you know, you didn't let the weed of the Bravo Alpha November kind of grow up within the environment, because with strong men around, there's no strong man who would let a weak man have access to his children to be raised or to even their daughter to even have kids.
Hmm.
And that's kind of how I was raised, fundamentalist, Baptist Christian kind of background. So,
Fundamentalist Baptist Christian background, rural Mississippi. They
yes,
had, in other words,
yeah.
these they had ways of measuring, right? Now, were these mainly what would you say was the source of their yardsticks? Was it a religious source, or was just basically the traditionalism? How would you say that they understood what a productive man was? And is that still the same set of yardsticks that you have, right, up till today?
Yeah. Like by the time I left in like 96 is when I left. So it was shortly after my grandfather died. I think it was like 92, maybe 93. I haven't looked at the actual death certificate in a while. But yeah, that was the actual standard because my grandparents were sharecroppers.
Mm,
So women and men knew how to do stuff. You had to do stuff. There was no time to be going out to clubs and all that kind of stuff. You actually had to do stuff and to have skills in order to survive within that type of rural environment. Because if you didn't want to be in a rural environment, you just would have went to a big city and got hooked on drugs or thought you was a pimp or in any of these type of other things that would actually sink you in society. And then you actually couldn't come back because your value system that you would have picked up, you never would have been able to hold that value system back within the old environment itself.
hmm hmm You say you left in '96, right? So why did you
Yeah,
leave?
definitely. No, it was graduation night, and I was told to get out of there pretty succinctly before my grandfather died. And by every other man that had any type of sense there, they told me to get out of there. The place was going nowhere. And you didn't need to be told by those men or women to get out of that environment itself. You're seeing people who graduated from high school, who went to college to come back to work at fast food restaurants and stuff. That's just what you saw. That's
Mm,
what you saw. And it was pretty clear that not having a car meant that most people couldn't go to college. And if you didn't have an actual family that could be able to sustain you, or you being able to sustain yourself while you're actually going to school, that the school actually didn't happen for you. Me, providers had died, and the only other way out was the actual military itself. But see, these are the things that were passed down to tell you about the actual chances of survival that you have within such an environment. These are not things that are actually taught on hand to people inside the environment itself because most people don't know how to survive themselves within the environment. So there was an age kind of gap of how to survive within the environment itself. And that's what kind of netted
mm,
the results of all the kids that we have misguided today. It's based on system of passing something down. Like I said, how to survive was grandmother's, grandfather's, father's actual tradition is surviving within the environment against all the odds. But you still had to move up. You still had to move up and do other things. Like you couldn't just survive within a broken environment because it was never meant for you to stay past a certain point. It was never meant to stay, especially when all the factories left. The only people were left were retirees, drug addicts, future drug addicts, and future people who was going to prison for picking up selling drugs. That's pretty much what the actual environment actually entailed. And people who wanted to join gangs and get shot up for reasons based on going across town and getting women, which is what people always follow.
mm. So you mentioned certain economic factors, right? You mentioned that your grandparents were sharecroppers, right? Or was it your
Yeah,
parents?
yeah,
Okay, your grandparents were sharecroppers. You were raised by your grandparents, I presume,
yeah,
right?
and parents, and parents. Like my mother was, like back then in Mississippi, you could actually get paid for being a stay-at-home nurse for your actual older relative. There was an actual paid position that the state would pay
Mm,
you to take care of older relatives, and so that's how my mother got by was taking care of my grandmother on my mother's side, and my mother and grandfather lived, on the other side of town.
mm. Okay. So then the factories leave. the agricultural system, if you will, by which survival was, shall we say, sustained and maintained and so on and so forth. And I'm assuming it's more of like a subsistence type of survival, perhaps great for character, but not great for moving on, if you will. Now, this seems to be like there are a confluence of circumstances that led to the environment being such that, because you're alluding to the fact that it was no, you got to get out of there, you got to get out of there, you got to get out of there. You know, the people who were
Yeah,
there are, you
yeah.
know, either a drug addict. I like how you put it, drug addict, future drug addict, or future gonna be in prison. Like, so if you could you shed some more light into the things which I'm assuming here? So I've kind of drawn some vague lines of like, okay, economic circumstances, so on and so forth. Things moving ahead, and then you have the industrial thing, but then the industrial stuff goes away. So the set of economic circumstances such that not a lot of opportunities, right? So am I correct in that? Anything to add?
No, because the only environments that were actually left was the service industry, nursing, if it was connected to that at all, and that was kind of it. The whole owning the store type, like I said, the whole economy kind of fell apart after the actual most of the actual factories left town and went overseas. So this is like early '90s, heading to the end of the actual, especially when I was there. Like the bottom fell out like in '95, and there was
Mm,
really nowhere else to actually go, and actually everything was collapsing, and that's when you stop having like the baby making factory, kind of start slowing down production because there was no place for these people to actually go but to leave town. Period.
mm.
So it was the
So
actual
there's some.
economic collapse of the entire area.
Mm,
So
I see. So there's something about the kind of person that moves, right? That leaves town. You were told to get out, and you were like, okay, what are the options? And and I'm sure that this is a characteristic that you've kind of taken with you through time, right? Well, let me just say this. What am I really getting at here? I always say that it's not really about the move, but it's about the willingness to make moves, right? In other words, there are no guarantees of success. However, being able to learn to solve problems that are right in front of you. Okay, I got to move out. What are the possible options? Okay, I'm going to take this path right now. Let's say it's the military. And then I get to a point, I learn as I'm moving along in the military, perhaps, that, okay, maybe it's not necessarily what I want. Maybe it's what I want. There's certain obstacles in my way. Do I jump over them? Do I sidestep them? Do I swim over them? It's like a Mario Brothers game almost, right? That kind of attitude of, look, the world is filled with objects out there, obstacles and so on and so forth, including people. And my task is to move forward. And I'm sure you've heard of some people that just they stay in their city. Okay, you talk about somebody going to college, coming back and doing fast food work. What are your thoughts as to what's going on there? Because it's not just that the environment produces this kind of people. There's something about a certain type of person, would you agree? Like, this is a proposition that
yes,
just
for the people
cannot
who
move.
stay.
They cannot
Oh,
move.
go ahead.
No, yeah, that's the question.
No,
They're not. Yeah.
and the problem is that once you stay stuck, like good people can stay stuck in bad situations for so long that they become the new bad people in the environment, even though they're not even engaging in bad things within the environment. They're just in a bad
Mm,
position.
mm.
And a lot of
They
people
stay stuck in a
don't
bad
know that.
situation. Mm. Do
Too
they
long,
do they
yeah, it
know
becomes your character as well.
do they know what's going on? Like why
No,
why are they?
they don't.
And I'm sure that you have examples in your head that you're probably running through, right? That you're like, yep,
Too many.
that guy, that guy, that guy. They just. I like how you put it. Good people can stay stuck in a bad situation for so long that they become the bad people, not because they're even engaging in, maybe they're not the quote unquote drug addicts or the ones getting locked up for the drugs or going out there, having 10,000 baby mamas or whatever, but because they're engaging with because they're stuck in a broken system, they're having outcomes that are broken, and they become themselves a statistic, right? If you will.
Correct. So it's
Mm.
like this, like all the things they're not engaging in, they clearly are still watching go on around them.
Mm-hmm.
So like the bad people inside the environment who actually engage, they actually haven't formulated an actual system to where they separated from actually seeing those bad things happen as normal. They still haven't created a system like the bad people there haven't created a system either. So they're both have the level of secrecy because now they kind of seeing the bad things going on in the environment as normal because neither side have left. And this is why the people who stay within the environment are just as big a danger as the people who engage in the bullshit within the actual environment itself. They both pose the same danger because they've never seen anything quite different outside of them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you say the danger is to the upcoming generation, the danger is to those from the outside looking in. What danger does this particular stew of people whom stay within an environment that is dysfunctional, to whom is the danger posed, if you will?
It's a danger to anybody who would want to change anything for them. Because remember,
Mm.
as normal as it is for people to stay there, it's also normal to cover up the track record of the people who are there. They're just as complicit as the people who are doing the actual damage to the environment itself. Because no one has actually created connections of a new system outside of that paradigm. So they're both parts of the same system. They're both limbs of the same tree. Just because the limbs of the tree are doing well on this side, the limbs that are actually hanging pretty low on the other side are still connected to the same tree of nutrients. It's just that each one have taken a different path. Like you can raise kids within an actual scenario and they all end up different as long as they're connected to the same root. But the change happens within an environment from a protective source. And the change outside the environment is another level of protection outside of the source. This is why you got so many different varying levels and groups of people with different types of thought processes who are never meant to be together because everybody don't have the same level of principle at the end of the day. Some people consume principle. Some people consume ignorance to make it forth. And some people are okay with others being consumed as long as they're not consumed. It's kind of like when I asked a guy one time, and he made this type of argument about, well, what are the street dudes are going to do? And I'm like, okay, can I sell drugs to your child? And he said, well, no, you can't sell it to my child. And I'm like, you got to get the F off the panel.
Mm-hmm.
We're done talking. You know what's right and you know what's wrong. But it's wrong is okay as long as it's not close enough to be wrong to you. And that's a level of corruption you cannot tolerate. Because at that point, you're no longer even talking to a human being at that point. You're talking to the
Mm-hmm.
good side of the actual bad situation, and they don't even know it.
I think, yeah, that's rather interesting. I immediately discern or I immediately kind of detect that these are worse because I can understand a guy who's like, hey, I'm selling drugs. It is horrible for the people who are buying the drugs. But F the world. I'm a nihilist. The universe is absurd. The sun is going to eat us up in a few billion years. Who gives a crap? I'm getting mine, right? But someone who feigns care up to the point of caring for the people whom are destroying the environment and saying things like, oh, what are they going to do? And so on and so forth. That, in other words, I see the former person, that person who's like nihilism, screw everything. I still see that person as a human being. I just got to watch out for him, right? But this other one over here, I don't even know what that kind of thing is. It is more dangerous in my. For me, it's particularly more, even more disgusting because that other guy that's doing that whole nihilism thing, at least they have a principle and they're internally consistent. They've decided to burn everything and everyone, and anybody who comes in. I suspect that they're the kind of person that, you know what, if my child gets caught up in this thing too and they get messed up, oh well, I guess it's too bad, but the world doesn't matter anyways, right? So I think that these kind of people are worse. Now let me ask you something about early role models. I suspect that your parents and grandparents were role models. So what did you learn from them, if you will, in terms of what, and also role models in terms of positive and negative. So I'm assuming your parents are positive role models, and then you probably have some negative role models. What did you learn as far as what to do and what not to do as you were growing up? I think you're muted, MOT.
All right, there we go. I, I think that the perspective of things have been laid out for me from beginning to end as to what my job was as an
Mm,
in the time period that I was. It was one particular time where I thought I was too smart for a situation, and I was immediately put back in my place. I think I was goofing off with my dad and my grandfather, and I made a suggestion that was right, and then I made a suggestion that seems incredibly stupid, but I got something right. But he was like, you know what? Sometime as an 11-year-old, you need to stay in your place as an 11-year-old because you may be very smart for an 11-year-old, but you would be developmentally disabled if you were in your 30s, as your father are, or even into your 60s or 70s to where he was. So it wasn't just the lessons that was being taught within the environment itself. There was like, this is the demarcation of what you're supposed to do as a child. So that way you're actually invested in your own future and not your parents' actual job. Like there was a clear demarcation point of what my job actually was as a child, as part of the construct of the family. I didn't have to figure that out on my own. That was already told to me as a child already.
hmm
I already knew what my job was, as if you
hmm hmm So, got out of there in 96. You were told to get out, graduation. You picked the
will. Yeah,
military. Why did you pick the
yeah,
military? What was the other,
yes.
what were the alternatives?
There were no alternatives. The
Mm,
alternatives was to stay and end up dying in the summertime or perhaps have a shot and leave town. That's it. Those were the only
I
options
see.
and choices and chances that was out.
So, what did you learn in the military, both about yourself, about the choice of going into the military, um, and just about life in general? In other words, when you went into the military, perhaps it was just a, I need to get out of here. This is the only door, right? Or perhaps you also said, oh, perhaps I may like it. Maybe I may see certain outcomes. But then when you were in there, you changed your mind. Or also in there, you learned things about yourself and about the military, so on and so forth. So, talk to a little bit to us about the military vis-a-vis lessons of this sort.
Yeah, I mean, like when I went in, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Otherwise, that I didn't know what outcomes that I clearly wanted. Right, I wasn't ready to go to school. If I did, I would have probably graduated in general studies or some nonsense like that, bouncing back and forth in between town. If I had, that actual thing, I just didn't know what I wanted. Even though I had a high score, I was pretty much focused on getting the hell out of that city and
Mm,
making sure that I was stationed overseas rather than being in the United States. There's a
mhm.
certain way that you can fill out your actual equal listing. That's what it's called in the Air Force, where you're pretty much guaranteed to get overseas.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
And that's what happened because I was aiming to be around a different environment while being around a different environment of grown ass men and being around different options and choices that is not based on the worst of the American run up that I witnessed in the South. So I wanted to go to a different situation where I was still protected from the actual outside forces by still having the quote unquote job that I had to show up to every single day until I actually figured things out. And once the military experience was going to be over, I would still have the actual money via the GI Bill, the VA home loan. If I wanted a house, no money down in the home. All these type of things I would never been able to get myself within those few years of actually just being able to go to school. So while it did seem like I was behind when I left at 17, so by the time I got out when I was, I think, 23, I was still ahead of everybody else because I knew exactly what I wanted to do at that point.
I see. Went out there, surrounded yourself with different kinds of people, saw different types of lifestyle, and so on and so forth. Perhaps learned a lot now, got to see how perhaps in a macro level other societies operate, right? Forget individuals and so on and so forth, but how just the military itself, an organization that is structured, how that works, and then going to different society, different, going out there in the world and seeing how other societies operated, right? That was something useful to you.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Mm-hmm.
much so.
And then you leave the military. Why did you decide not to stay in the military?
I mean, it wasn't for me, man. I mean, like 9/11 happened, and I seen how much that we worked then, and I knew that they were already planning to go to Iraq. Like as soon as Bush got elected, I seen all those plans that they had. As soon as that dude got elected, we already knew we was going into Iraq. As soon as he got elected, and I wanted out because I knew how much we worked and how much I couldn't focus on school in a in a peacetime kind of effort without war going on, without constant deployments, and knowing the constant deployment that it would take to actually still be a part of the career field. I just didn't want any parts of it. I gave them enough time. Now I was ready to move on with my life because I found out what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned school there. What were you going to school for?
At that point in time, I was in law enforcement, so I got out. I did that for a little while. Then I was a fugitive recovery agent, which is called a bounty hunter. For a while, while I was doing that, I started going to school for IT because IT was making a gang of money in 2000, 2001. We're talking about normal desktop hardware. People was getting paid 80, 90 grand. I mean, it was nuts. And I wanted a piece of that. So that's why I went into the field when I went into it.
I see. So you mentioned the GI Bill, right? So you'd be able to, oh, were you also studying while you were in the military as well? Were you going to
Yeah,
college or, okay.
yes. And here's the
Yeah.
thing that people don't get
Okay.
about studying for school while you're in the military. A lot of people will move you like they did. They moved me from nights to days, days to nights. They know that you wouldn't be able to keep up with a class moving from days to nights when you actually have to show up at the actual school they actually go to school. So I found a way around that was actually still doing the actual schoolwork and showing up at the labs and stuff on the weekends and all that kind of other stuff rather than staying with my actual class. So I still got all the work done. It's just that people want to discourage you from going to school because they want you to stay in that environment called the military. And I understood how that worked too, because I was
Mm,
paying very close attention to people who wanted a different life outside of law enforcement and how they actually treated them. So I knew how that stuff was going to go down. And that's why I decided to take the route that I did take because I've seen so many people go through going in there, actually find out what they want to do, becoming totally disinterested in the environment itself and moving on.
mhm, uh-huh. So there seems to be a pattern here, and that's why I titled it track record. It encompasses many different things, but it's about watching people around you, and you young Swift and Black Curls, you guys will grow up and you'll understand that whether you think you are self-made or not, you are a product, okay, of observations, both internal and external. Don't want to get too philosophical with y'all right now, but even if you don't know whom influenced you in terms of what to do and what not to do, it helps to look back and see whom were the people that were in a particular track, right? That I find to be conducive, to be congruent with what I think is productive, and so on and so forth. And who were those that were not in that particular track? Even if you think, oh, well, they never influenced me, so on and so forth. Unless, as Young Swift said, that, you just see, all you see around your environment is how do you call it? Bravo Alpha November? Yeah,
Yeah.
if all you see is in terms of older people or Bravo Alpha Novembers, then I understand. But even then, you get to learn what not to be, right? And I think that cataloging that is quite important. And I like the way you speak about the moves you make with regards to the moves other people are making. Shout out to Mr. Reynald Cherry in the house. Thank you very much for the $20 super chat. Very much appreciated. That puts you at the show sponsor tier. Okay. Productivity panel on deck. That indeed is true. And we have Mr. K Polymath from across the pond. With $2. So what is that? That is a little. Is that over $3? I mean, £2. I mean, not gonna do the conversion right now, but it's much appreciated. Thank you very much. Says, hey, you. So let's continue. And Young Swift says, yes, dummies. Everyone is dummies around Young Swift. I don't know where the hell are you from? Anyways, so you leave the military.
Yes.
Now you're going into this IT thing, right?
Yeah.
Because you saw that, there was money to be made and you wanted a piece of that. Now, what is your mindset when you're going into that? Is it like, because again, there's that whole thing that I say, which is about making moves where you're just like, because I don't really believe in having big goals, because I think people get distracted by goals. Let me explain what I mean, okay? And then you're kind of, it's part of the question, which is, we keep on getting told, right? Things such as a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. You see, the reason why why human beings have to remind themselves of that thing, which is an obvious thing, right? It's like, okay, why do we have to tell ourselves that? These are the kind of things that I think about. What is it about our psyche that makes it such that we need to be reminded to take the step? Otherwise, we don't take it. The reason is we get distracted by the 1,000 miles. We get distracted by the big mountain we got to climb. We get distracted by the big goals, and we forget that life is a step-by-step process. So what I'm asking you is this. When you're like, hey, there's the military, I'm going to use that. I'm going to learn from this person. There's that thing over there, I'm going to take that. Are you in that step-by-step process of, I look at the obstacle right in front of me, I sidestep, I hop over, I swim, I negotiate, I bribe, whatever it may be, in order to take advantage? Or are you having this big goal that you're trying to get to? Which is it?
It's neither. Like, you have to understand first. You have to understand the steps to getting to where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
This is a par 3. It is not a par 5. It doesn't matter how wildly you swing off the actual tee. It's still going to be about the approach at some point. But if you start with the approach and you research the actual path that you're actually going, you're going to get there. I mean, it's no more elementary than the tortoise and the hare, the actual structure of how this thing works. It still works within the structure itself. It's still a run-up to actual production within itself. Like most of the jobs that I got, transitioning myself out of the fugitive recovery thing, were still based on things that I was told that I needed to do along with the grades that I was getting while I was in school. I started off, had to use my GI Bill to pay rent, those type of things. And then I started making slowly more and more money, because the end goal that I was looking at, there was an actual path to getting to the actual end goal. But a lot of people don't understand beginning to end type thinking and end to beginning type thinking, because they want to drive all the way to the actual end goal. So since they don't know anything about the process itself, they end up picking up things. When they don't quickly work out, they put that down and pick up another thing. And when that don't work out, you have a whole lifestyle of quick starts and fast finishes, rather than a slow progressive start and a reasonable finish that takes one time to do. And people are not taught that, because they want to actually do the actual things itself that bring them the greatest return on investment while not being properly invested. It's too many times that I've seen individuals come into school bringing this hood street type of nonsense to the table, and after a couple of classes, you just don't see them anymore. Why? The type of stuff that brought you into the school and into those baseline classes, the moment that you start having to actually put things up that is not based on baseline communication skills and trying to be a class clown, like actual work. Because in that school, nobody cared about your grades. If your ass could not program a Unix box at the end of the class, you wasn't gonna pass.
Mm-hmm.
And when they sit your ass in front of these type of things as competencies, because that's what we had back then, no one really cared about the grades in the school, because the only thing the school was there for is for you to practice the actual outcomes of what you're going to be required to do at the end of the class, along with the coursework. So it was still an actual hands-on activity, but you can just do the schoolwork, which was pretty easy, open book test. Anybody can make straight A's, but anybody can't go there and actually put what they actually learned into actual action. And that was what the difference was. Because a lot of people got these grandiose ideas, but they never tried nothing in real life. Once you start to try, or once you start to fail, because every time you fail or watch failure itself, it's going to teach you about being realistic about the process itself. And you got to take a hard, long look at yourself and be like, look, not only do you have to admit that you failed, you have to have the actual idea that you need to get up from failure, learn the actual process because it's pretty straightforward, and practice the actual process, not learn how to fail better. Like, most of these people want to learn how to fail better. This is why they circulate around the same conversations, because they want to learn how to fail better. They want to practice the same things over and over again in environments where they know they're just not going to work because they want to fail better. They don't want to proceed down a long list and line of things because the actual new environment that they're actually trying to get into is not going to require the older individuals that you depended on to maintain you in the previous environment.
You put a lot on the table. Let me go to that golf analogy that you said there. So there is, I'm not a golf guy, okay, but I know that the ball has got to get in the hole at some point, right? So you mentioned drive versus approach, okay?
Yes.
So some people want to just go in there and just swing and just boom, and it's just going to land there. But you're like, hey, we do know how things tend to work. It probably should take you 5 swings, or it's going to want 1 here, 2 there, blah, blah, blah. And if you do that, as you said, you're going to get there. But if you do that wild swing and it doesn't get there, now you drop the golf thing and now you're going to try some other thing and you're going to just go with a wild drive versus thinking about the approach. Because you can have all the force in the world, right? For our engineer people out there, we know what vectors are. That vectors, such as force, for example, they have a magnitude, but they also have a direction. So that drive is the magnitude. I got 10,000 pounds worth of force, but if it's going in the wrong direction, it don't matter, right?
Correct.
I see. So that is quite important there in terms of action, being able to have the result, put the action to practice such that you're able to code that box, as you said. You're able to get that ball into the hole, right? And you do the things that it takes, as opposed to this grandiose idea of how you're going to swing for the fences and get there with 1 shot. These grandiose ideas of how everything is just going to work out in place without understanding that there are going to be obstacles. There have to be steps. If you're going to do certain things, well, you need money. And then you go ahead and you get money in the way in which you can, because right now you're not in the IT world anymore, right? So how did you move on from the IT world to what was the next step in your journey, if you will?
No, it was this career field right here, transportation.
Okay.
I mean, because like even better than a drive versus approach type thing is tactics versus force. That's all it is. I mean, it's another way of putting tactics versus force, but people understand. Some people understand it better than others, but that's what it was. A very simple input, very simple output, very simple building business relations, very simple thing involved. Truck, get on site, pick up, go to destination. Can't be any harder than
that. How did you get into in other words, when I say how, so you've been showing us your thought process. Get out of Mississippi in 96. Military is that door out. You get in there, you see different societies, you see how they operate. You're like, okay. You begin to get a sense of what a functional society is, where men focus on production and provision rather than focusing on what the woman wants, right?
Right.
Which, if you focus on what the ladies, well, no, gentlemen out there, if you focus on what the woman wants, you become useless to the woman and to yourself. Okay,
Correct.
let me say that again. If you focus on what the woman wants, you become useless to both the woman and yourself, because what you should be doing out there is conquering the external world, protection, provision, hunting, whatever it may be. You pick however the situation is, right? You're out there conquering the external world. What the woman wants or what the woman is about is more about experience. It's more about emotions. It's more about the social thing. It's more about fairness and so on and so forth. So if you focus on what the woman wants, you're going to be focused on game, swagger, aesthetics, so on and so forth. Where
Mhm.
does that lead you? You become useless to both yourself, the woman, and society at large, right? So you're learning all these things. You see money over there, like, hey, there's money over there in that IT thing. I could do that. You grab that money. Now, how did your head turn to the transportation sector?
No, it's pretty easy to get into. It's pretty easy to make, a lot of money very fast and consistently, as long as you were consistent. Because I did it wrong coming into the field, because I had this type of improper thinking when I first came into the field. But once I witnessed a downfall that actually put me behind a couple months, then I started to learn the process of how to do things right. Even though I went through the same process or even witnessed the best processes and practices, I still tried to do it my way, and it did not work for me.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because I could tell you what the mistake was, and the fatal flaw and thing was. Even though I worked for fleets that had basically the same vehicle overall, I decided to go out and get several different vehicles as if I knew everything about every single vehicle. And it turns out that those very cheaply vehicles can cost your ass a lot of money when it comes to fixing, rather than focusing on one type of vehicle, one set of problems, having the same type of vehicle, no matter how far throughout the United States you have to drive to go get that one type of vehicle, as long as you're dealing with one specific set of problems that you actually know about inside and out, that's the best way to go. I had an International, a Volvo, and a Mac, and a Freightliner. Most of the problems with the Freightliner, I never had any problems with. The other three needed specialists, weak stuff getting in, quotes were out of this world, and I ended up giving up those trucks anyway. When I
Okay.
came from fleets that had one, the other, or the other, they had their own specialized mechanics that worked on their specific style of trucks. So now, not only was I not a mechanic at all, I had to learn 4 different types of platforms of problems.
Hmm.
And I was just completely overwhelmed. Well, I already had people in my family that specialized in one platform. So
Hmm.
I was able to leverage their information from them to actually help me do the things that I should have did in the first place. But I had that, multiplier effect of bad thinking. I thought that having options of input would equal options of output. That's not true. As long as the input options are equal and fair, you're going to have options of output that are equal and fair itself. But see, I had a flaw in my design. I thought that the basic outputs was going to be regarded on the inputs when it was actually the reverse. And I already witnessed better. There was really no reason for me to practice that, but I did it
Hmm.
anyway, and I paid the price for it.
Gotcha. Hmm. So rather than focus on, okay, well, this is the stuff that I have experience with that gives me the kinds of outputs that I want, right? You were like, oh, maybe I should have some variety on the input side, and then maybe that'll give me a more kind of variety on the output side. But and you had to learn. Now, generally speaking, when it comes to your learning, do you find that you have to make mistakes in order to learn, or do you tend to learn from others? Now, I know that you mentioned that you do take advantage of other people's experience, like you mentioned,
Yeah,
for example, you
yes.
have family. What do you tend to make your own mistakes by yourself?
No, I tend not to make my own mistakes. I tend to
Ah,
let other people make the mistakes and
good
actually have
stuff.
the path, because I know how to ask questions. If have to get confessions out of people, you know how to ask the proper questions. As long as you know what your end goal is. you can ask the proper questions if you know what your end goal is. If you don't know what your end goal is, you're not going to ask the proper question. Because the things that you think are vital and important are the least bit of things that come to mind if you don't have a structured end goal ahead of you. I was trying to get trucks that had warranties and all this kind of stuff, but I realized quickly that those warranties really didn't cover anything. And while your truck is not working, you're still going to have to rent another truck in place of that truck that, quote unquote, you got a warranty for. So by not understanding the process that warranties don't mean anything, and that you're still going to have another truck within its place, that truck is still going to be down, the driver don't get paid. There's nothing more embarrassing or humiliating as a person owning an owner-operator fleet, having all that go down and going back to being an employee of a company and having to explain to them that you didn't manage your fleet properly and that you're not going to be there very long in order for you to get your fleet back. That's a hell of an embarrassing thing to talk about to people, man. They know your ass wasn't going to be there forever. But it's a lesson I had to learn, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's embarrassing like a motherfucker, but it's a lesson I had to learn. It's a humiliation principle I only wanted to go through one time. And I made damn sure that I didn't make that mistake again.
I see.
So I became a fundamentalist in learning about how not to put myself back in that position.
Speaking of not putting yourself in certain situations, like there may be that position because you said the truck is down, the driver is not getting paid. That is not a nice situation either. You hire a person, perhaps let's assume they're a decent person, and you're like, come over here for me on the MOT side. We're the best truck fleet company, whatever it may be, and then you mess something up, and then things are down. This guy's not getting paid. How much of a motivating factor is that for you in terms of like, you know what? In other words, having employees keeps you accountable is the proposition. Do you agree with that? What do you have to say about that?
This is why I never really expanded my living condition beyond what was needed. I've seen people go through that before. I've seen people go through that before. You know, all of a sudden you have a good month, 20, 30 grand coming in per month after taxes. You think you're doing well. You know, you walk in and now you turn your $30,000 worth of profit into $20,000 worth of poor economic circumstances. You want to upgrade the house, you want to upgrade the car, you want to attract more women because you got self-esteem issues, and you want to buy all these self-esteem based products that has nothing to do with your actual business. So a lot of people, as soon as they start doing well, they loot their company without even knowing it because they want to feel better about doing well versus doing well and feeling better without buying the objects of doing well. You have to do well without the objects. You got to feel well without the objects. You got to feel well without the attention. Because if you do that stuff for the wrong reasons, all that stuff is going to leave as soon as the actual input that brought the actual output itself.
I see. You see, that's very good because this is something, I like that lesson right there. For those of you whom are going out and you're trying to expand something, and then you're like, okay, let me bring in an employee, you got to understand that that becomes the key now. Keeping that employee and that machinery running becomes the key. Not you taking the outputs to go get a Lamborghini or some kind of thing like that. It's like, no, keep that in there, keep your stash of cash, increase your line of credit for whatever. Always keep that kind of idea that what if everything were to go south? Can I keep this machinery going? Because the machinery is key. I always use the analogy of the tank versus the pipeline, because people are always like, well, there are two things involved with this here. One is the reason why people tend not to get employees or expand, because they're like, I make, let's say they're making $10,000 a month, $120,000 a year. They're like, I can keep all that to myself, okay? They rather not give a little bit of that away. In other words, they rather not make like $200,000 a year, right? And perhaps even net less to themselves, because they're like, yeah, the pipeline is increased, the flow, $200,000 a year is a bigger flow, but I got to pay this. I got to get better insurance. I got to pay this guy. I can't be doing this under the table stuff anymore, blah, blah, blah. But they don't understand that in this particular example, having that pipeline now makes it such that you can take vacation. Now, not just for vacation's sake, but in other words, you have time, right? Whatever you're going to do with the time with, some people is vacation, right? But you now have time, and the organization is not so dependent upon you. Plus, you can leverage in the marketplace, let's say, amongst financiers of all kinds, either venture capitalists or bankers or whatever, you can leverage a bigger pipeline. When you're in Shark Tank, no one asks the people, what do you have in your bank account? No, they say, how big is the pipeline? What are you moving a month, right? So it's not about, well, how much you stored or how much you can keep by yourself. It's like, well, I'm going to create an organization and machinery such that there can be a lot of movement, right? And then I make sure that that movement is going on. It's primary. I'm not trying to siphon out so that I can flex, right? But I want to make sure that machinery is going on very well. I like that. And then I want to also just reiterate that point about the objects versus the person that you become. In other words, some people think success is about the objects, but no, success and the work and the process is about the person that you are becoming, the person that the values that you're attaining and that you're able to maintain, right? So that's why, when people win the lottery, we tend to know what happens, right? It slips right out of their hands. Sometimes it destroys them, because earning is more important than the object itself. It's the earning, it's the internal stuff, it's that thing that you are that is more important. So, and I like how you link these two things together, that idea of it's not about the object, it's about the earning and the becoming of somebody. And also, when you have the employee, you have the machinery, you focus on the machinery, you tend that machinery, you tend the pipeline. It's not about you and what you can get, it's about the fact that you can maintain an organization. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add or reiterate to the points which you just made, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to pay somebody nearly six figures and they be comfortable than you to pay yourself a little bit more than six figures and you be comfortable. As long as you have a system, not products, a system that actually works, you're actually going to get paid from the system. You're not going to get paid from the products. You're going to get paid from the system. You got to have a winning system. You have to be able to recreate this system under any circumstance in order to have success. Products don't lead to success. A system leads to success. And a lot of people think that half doing it with the products that sound successful is actually going to lead you to a system of being successful. I understand the difference. And it's very easy to understand the difference, but a lot of people want to bring this undisciplined activity along for the ride that give them multiple swings at becoming successful rather than just going straight to the source and being successful itself. They gotta have the room for undisciplined activities that don't lead to anything.
I see. There's a question down there by K Polymath regarding contracts, service contracts or parts or both. Not sure I understand the question, but does the question make sense, and would you mind answering it? Says, do you tend to go for service contracts or parts or both?
What I started doing is understanding why they wanted service contracts in the first place.
Could you explain what a service contract versus parts is?
Yeah. I go for the parts itself, not the service contract. A service contract is not a level of protection. A service contract is a level of safety that you think you have until you actually still have to buy the parts and do everything else. The service contract is nothing but a safety net. They give you the idea that everything's covered. But service contracts are not meant to cover anything that's major. It's meant to cover things that are minor and cheap. But you're going to pay a lot for a service contract because you don't know what's in it. Like a lot of people pay a gang of money for insurance until they actually have to use it. And then they realize not that many things are covered and all these things are chargebacks. They're going to come back to you. It's no different from health insurance to any other type of insurance. It's kind of like a cash policy when it comes to property and actual value policy. There's a difference. People want to pay the cheap amount, and then they're trying to get that $2,000 laptop replaced for $400. Why? You had a cash policy rather than an actual value policy. But inside your head, because you didn't use the actual policy itself, you thought you was actually covered. When it came for you to actually use it, that's when you noticed the actual coverage isn't there. So I understood the actual principle behind why they would want service contracts, because I used to have that service contract mind state as well. But see, I learned from my mistakes whenever I bought different vehicles with quote unquote service contracts. And then it turns out I had to still pay for all the parts and everything else as I would even if I didn't have the service contract. So I was trying to benefit off the situation without understanding the process. Now that I understand the process, I can benefit off the situation. It comes with understanding the process itself first before you can benefit. You can't put a lackluster effort into understanding things and benefit off of them. That's the things that people actually do incorrectly within the environment, and it nets them a lot of loss and a lot of time loss, by the way.
How important is time to you?
This point, everything, man.
100%. Yeah. So time is the only resource, right? I mean, it is the only thing. What good? I mean, if you're dead, we're all dead. There is no time. What are we even talking about, right? What are we talking about? What air, even air becomes useless at that point, water, so on and so forth. So time is the ultimate resource. Do things to leverage other people's time so that you have extra time so that you can do what you're best at, so on and so forth. Now, if somebody were to come to you, MOT, and says, throw out this crazy question out there, says, how do I start a transportation company? How would you go about answering that question?
I'm like, are you willing to work in the actual field of transportation for a couple of years before you formulate your opinion on whether or not you want to form a company?
So that's step number one. I want you to be
invested in the process of owning a transportation company and not just try to depend on buying a truck, maybe put a driver in there. You don't have a CDL. You don't know how things work. You never worked in the industry. Me, well, I used to give out $1 million plans for actually from beginning to end how to do this. People would still screw that up. Step-by-step plan. How to do everything. From not being a driver to being a driver all the way to building a fleet. People used to mess it up. So I just stopped doing it. Because every time I looked around, there was another person coming to me after they messed something up. Oh, MOT, after they disappear for months. You don't know what's going on. You're not going to track them down. Too many people to talk to. Then all of a sudden, it's this hushed tone conversation about, yeah, man, well, I know you're going to be mad. Oh, yeah. So, tell me what happened. Oh, yeah, man. So I went and got me this truck, right? And it looked like it looked good. And, it had a warranty. I'm like, where's that in the plan that I'm actually talking about today, how you should do things? Well, I had good credit. And I told you about the brand new vehicles, man. You're going to have brand new vehicle problems and that you should save at least 10 grand. You're going to be able to do something like that. Like it's actually in the plan. So I'm like, I don't understand what we're even talking about. So it's like, yeah, man, but and then like as the conversation go along, it's compacting failure on compacting failure on compacting failure. And then at some point you just have to hang up the phone. Like, I don't want to hear shit. Bye. You fix it.
Good. So
yeah, good luck on it. Yeah.
You get in the transportation industry, you understand the process.
Yes.
You get committed to that process.
Yes.
And then if, let's say, this person was not the type of person that, okay, I'm sure there may be at least maybe one or two people that has followed your plan, right? Or followed your plan.
Probably 3 out of like 500.
Jesus Christ.
The success, probably 3 out of 500.
Gotcha. Okay, success 3 out of 500. Maybe some of the failures, maybe 10 people that out of the hundreds that failed, maybe 10 of them, circumstances out of their control, something like that. Let's grant them that.
No. Circumstances within their control. Where most people fail is that as soon as they start making money, they start replacing it with women with kids and lifestyle. Self-esteem, repairing their self-esteem and repairing the chances that they didn't get with Keisha by giving Keisha everything that she would ever desire and still not get respect for it after you give it to her. That's 90% of the failures. And when they realize they can't deal with that, they have to go back to a life of not dealing with Keisha and being broke because they're much more stable in that condition.
Much more stable with Keisha and broke.
Keisha and broke. Yes.
Interesting. Now, okay. And I'll get back to the that success and then the some of the steps. I mean, it doesn't have to be, you know, first step, but you know, in generalities. But that thing about being stable, I think, is key. Now, how much chaos do you have to deal with in order to be successful? Okay, you're a successful man. How
It's not
much?
chaos. It's not chaos you have to
It's
deal
not
with.
chaos, huh? Okay, good.
It's not chaos that you have to deal with. Chaos is uncertainty. That's what chaos is. Uncertainty. If you're certain about the process that you're in, even if it's a hard answer, at least you got an answer. Like
Mm,
if you have an application that somebody is like right now, I just dealt with somebody over the phone, who gave me a call in the middle of, me not being on camera. Oh, I'm here. I searched for trucks. Yeah, the nearest thing is 175 miles away.
hmm
You don't
hmm
sound concerned. No, I'm not concerned. I know how far you're away from stuff. I know the area. This person's going to be out there in 4 hours. What am I going to do? You're going to sit your ass on the side of the road and wait till they actually get there. But what if I'm late? Motherfucker, you already late. You can't fucking move. I know all this. Don't go over this with me. I know what you think. Sit in the back, sit on the fucking AC and play Xbox until they fucking get there.
Hmm.
Because everything is about, I don't know. It's like, dude, I'm the owner. I got this shit figured out. All right. Stop treating me like I don't know what the fuck is going on. Yeah, you pissed off. You can't fucking move. You got a flat fucking tire and you're in the middle of fucking nowhere. I know how that feels. Not good. This is why I tell you to keep 3 or 4 days of food on a goddamn truck.
hmm
So that way you don't have to worrying about shit. Somebody's coming out there to you. Trust me, I don't get paid if your ass don't deliver. That's how the shit works. You don't show up, I don't get paid. Trust me, the words that you got ain't the words that I got.
hmm
You could be a day or two off. You could be a couple hours off. I can't be a whole week off. You're not going to be sitting on the road for a fucking week. So stop acting like you can't sit somewhere for 4 or 5 fucking hours. That's it.
I
Why
like how
worry
you
about shit?
reframed it. I
Yeah,
like how you reframed it, which
I
is
got this shit figured out down to the
got the
fucking.
answers. It may be a tough answer. It may be, okay, you're going to sit there for hours, but there's an answer, right? There's an answer. And then, hence, the actual chaos you got to deal with is in you. You got to be a stable individual. You got to be able to make sure that you had that 5 days worth of food, or be Zen monk enough to sit through it, right? In other words, know the answers, know the process, and deal with your internal chaos type stuff. Don't be that kind of person who is more comfortable when they're broke in a situation where it's a hand to mouth situation where the questions are simple and the answers are simple. Because when you're flat broke with Keisha, then
Correct.
there is
She's
no
gone.
question that.
Yeah,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. She's out of there. So like, this is another situation. Let's say that they don't have a part somewhere and you have to sit for 3 days.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not my fault, not your fault. No. It's my fault, not your fault. Then I get questions. Am I going to be paid the total amount on Monday or Tuesday? I'm like, what do you think? Well, I haven't done any work. I've just been sitting out and, just in the hotel. Like, why the fuck you? I'm like, all right, so how do we begin our business relationship? By telling you what? The money's going to fucking be there regardless of how often your ass is down. The chaos that goes on inside of your head for you not being able to maintain your fucking work environment has nothing to do with the fucking business arrangement that we started off with. I'm not sure who the fuck you're talking to or who you fucking dealing with, but I do exactly what the fuck I say. And if you can't get that through your fucking head, that everything is going to fucking work because I'm involved with it, and you don't have to worry about it, then you're working at the wrong fucking place. I don't want to have this conversation multiple fucking times. You're going to get it this time right here. The money's going to fucking be there. You're going to get paid the same amount of money. The vehicle's down is because whatever the fucking reason is. How often are you down? Not often, right? Why the fuck would I shortchange you on money? So that way I can have you go fuck my shit up? No. I pay for when things are down. My business is not straight. That's why we're offline. Don't put your end goal money issues, which isn't that much, in favor of the actual things that are going on for the whole business by itself. The customer knows you down. I know you down. My bank account is still gonna pay you on fucking Monday. What's the problem? Oh man, man, these are your fucking problems. We already solved that shit with you. That's the chaos in your head that's speaking. That's your non-trust in the process with me that's speaking. There's no problem with the fucking process. It's just failed, and there's a very simple solution. Do the right fucking thing in every single fucking circumstance. You won't have this fucking problem. But see, as black men within Black America, we only benefit off of circumstances when they don't work. I'm with a process that fucking works 100% of the time. Input by him, best effort, output. Not hard. But some people, you have to keep reminding them over and over again about simplistic ass conversations because they think like a bitch. Bitches don't like the idea of chaos, so they fucking spin and go crazy. Men act like that because they've been in those circumstances too many times and they don't have trust in a process. It's very hard to trust that a process works because the moment that it don't work, that's where all the actual chaos comes into play. But there's no need for the fucking chaos if there's a simple solution already. The simple solution, wait on the fucking part, have as much fun as you fucking can. You're never going to have this kind of time off again under my watch.
I see.
Because I failed. The equipment wasn't right. I failed. That's what happened there. When I fail, I'm going to make sure I pay for the shit, and the shit's going to be right because I got the same equipment across the board. So the problem that this person is going through, I'm checking all my other equipment for the same problem. He don't understand how this problem is informing me about future problems in the future through his example. Now, I can go through that, and I can tell him about that, and all this shit is shit that he don't give a fuck about. Or just sit back and enjoy the fucking ride. Things are going to work. Yeah, not hard.
I like it. I love it. Shout out to K Polymath with another £2, a little less than $4 from you again. Says, brothers unlocking what I assume to be real-time problem solving. Brothers unlocking real-time problem solving.
Okay, all right, K-Love. I'm sorry. I'll stop.
Without the Is K-Love one of your people or
No. I'm not.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good.
But that's not that many women who actually listen to my channel anyway. So I want to.
I have about 3% women over here. So
okay. I have less than one for myself. So I'm sorry.
Gotcha. Yeah, you scare them away with all the F-bombs.
Yeah.
Shout out to K-Love. She says, I'm new. Shout out to you. Now, that is absolutely key right there, which is, let me not reiterate the point, but let me ask something that you said there. You said, your words, Black men in America.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard things such as, corporate America.
Correct.
To bite you in the butt.
Yes.
Black men tend to work in the government where they want that kind of certainty, which, by the way, is not the way any kind of society should be. In other words, the productive class of people exchanging with each other. I don't even care if you're a freaking communist or whatever it should not be public sector type stuff. That, in my mind, is unless you're some kind of politician, some kind of high level people, we do need these systems. But to flock in mass into some kind of sanctuary, right, where things are guaranteed, is kind of ass backwards. Sorry, pardon the cussing to me. Like, what exactly is it that makes it such that people are scared of uncertainty in a mass like that, where it's like, oh, well, it's got to be the government, or it's got to be this. Oh, the corporate America boogeyman, or the people are not going to give me funding to start. I can't be MOT because, racism is going to get me. They're not going to give me the funding to get the trucks, blah, 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 blah. What do you have to say about that in terms of the seeming desire for certainty, right? Not just certainty of a process, but certainty that nothing ever goes wrong, where I just push paper in the ministry of whatever for the rest of my life. What is that about?
Certainty is when things go wrong. You're not growing with uncertainty. Certainty is when things has collapsed. Trust me. When you're not growing, when you're going through the same thing over and over, that type of certainty, that's when things have collapsed. Now, if you create your own certainty through circumstance, that's obviously different. Lots of moving parts, things have to be running right. You actually got a process that you got to be able to make sure that works right. That's different. If you have an overarching system, it really doesn't work. But the government overall is supposed to work like that, not without you. But I don't have anything against public sector work with the actual government. There's a lot of people who work there who do things that are quite good. But even though I did work for the federal government for a little while, I did see a lot of people who were quite stagnant in where they were. Like I was the new guy who had an MBA, and at that time I was going through a doctorate, and you had people who've been there 24, 25 years. It was like, you got a degree, why'd you go get a degree? I've been here 25 years, but no degree. Been here since I was what? They're like 60-some years old. Been here since I was 40-some.
So they're questioning the rationale behind your degree. They're questioning the rationale behind you getting things of jumping
Absolutely.
over new hoops.
Yes.
Why would you jump over new hoops? I've been here getting fed by the federal government for. Okay.
Correct.
I'm sure you didn't like that. That turned you off to them, right?
No. It's like I knew where I was going, and it was not from where I came in for. They were there for exactly why they went there. They didn't understand the types and styles of thinking that led to the conclusion. I knew that being here would put me in a stepping stone to being in a better position contract-wise where I could leave the federal government, which is where that was the point. The point wasn't to stay there. The point wasn't to stay at a GS 11, for 49 point something thousand dollars a year. That wasn't my end goal. I was already at there before I left my last job to come there. I use it as a stepping stone to get to the contracting thing, so that way I can get paid $100 an hour, which I did go through that for a while. Mm-hmm. So it's like for them, they're looking at it from the perspective of, I put nothing in, look at what I'm getting out of it. You put a lot in, look at what you're getting out of it. The same thing that I'm getting out of it. I'm like, that's only if you look through your eyes. You need to look through me, through my eyes. Just because they taught you everything that you know, that doesn't mean they taught you everything that I know. That's quite different. No one can teach you perspective.
Look at it through your eyes. They didn't teach me everything that I know. I had a goal in mind. Now, the goal that you had in mind, what is the source of the impetus? What is the motive power behind you pushing forward? Because it's not some mansion up in the hill, as you've already alluded to, right? Let's say for me, for example, like I cannot imagine being another way. I cannot imagine not juggling a bunch of things. I cannot imagine not trying to perfect, not perfect, perfection is not possible, but not trying to hone the skills in any particular endeavor that I'm in, not trying to compete with the best of, not trying to get more knowledge and concretize the knowledge a little bit more, understand the fundamentals a little bit more, right? In other words, there is something that pushes, just that engine just wants to keep on going and going and going, and it never stops, right? Is this something similar for you? Can this be taught? Can this be inculcated? If we took a step up to the cultural place from which we started, how does this particular set of, how does this motive power, if you will, get spread out into a culture more, where more people are seeing themselves in that way, where they cannot help but be improving?
Here's the thing. If you don't leave that environment, you'll never know. You clearly won't know. Like I wouldn't have met some of the best people I ever met in my life in the military. Being stuck in an environment who was way older than I was. They were very smart, but there's a difference. I was like, had a high IQ, that type of smart, but I had to learn very quickly, like there's a certain thing in being literally smart and being applicably smart to a situation. Those are two different things. Like anybody can be literally smart, can access memory and do all types of things. Not a lot of people can put their smarts and actually get a specific result across the board. Because that's the actual process itself. Only thing you have to do is pull somebody out of their comfort zone and put them in a different environment, and you'll see that those skills are actually pretty attuned to the environment that they run. And a lot of people don't put themselves in other environments themselves. This is why most business owners stay within the business class that they're at. Don't go around trying to do other new things and all that kind of stuff, because everything that it took for them to get into the position that they're in are not really all that transferable to other environments. Well, everything that I did, I wanted to make sure that it was transferable no matter what I went into. Better to be
Interesting.
it's better to be the big fish in the small pond than the small fish in the big pond.
Let me go ahead and read out some super chats. Shout out to Reynold Cherry in the house, says, same reason Southwest Airlines only has Boeing 737s. Same parts, part interchangeable. Failure can be mitigated with such a strategy. Yes, this is referring
Correct.
back to the point that you made earlier. Very, trust in the system. And shout out to you. That atonement seems to be atonement. Thank you for the conversation, the knowledge dropping. Ike and MOT, keep up the great work. Well, thank you very much. So, this thing about going from the land of just, I can ideate, I can conceptualize things, I can imagine some object in my head and move it 360 degrees and move some numbers together. Maybe I can do some math in my head, so on and so forth. I can access memory. I got random access memory, blah, blah, blah. And then moving into, I need to learn applicability. Was that a process for you, or was
Yes.
applicability was the thing? Or did you at some point was like, okay, you know what? I need to learn applicability. And can you explain that process? What was the cause? How did it happen? And how do you went about learning that applicability was quite important?
Correct. I mean, it's kind of like the difference between an arts degree and an applied science degree. And the actual classes that are actually involved in taking on both of those specific paths, like the difference between having an actual degree from a tech school that mostly focuses on one thing versus traditional school that focuses on a whole bunch of things. And maybe you have 4 or 5 classes that are actually dominant toward what you're actually trying to get into. I had to learn that the applied science of where I was trying to actually go was the better model. I wanted more substance over more theory about things that I couldn't use. Once you start going over the same information, going up the actual degree line itself, the actual system of learning only connected you to a greater system of doing a hell of a lot more things by yourself outside of the learning process. That's what the learning process is supposed to engage you in. It's supposed to engage you with a baseline level of competency. And then everything that you apply outside of the competency level that you actually receive is all the things that you do on your own. It's kind of like you didn't have to put any effort in high school. How much effort are you going to put into in college? Are you going to be able to graduate with an actual degree in something? Or are you going to transfer and make your degree actual easier just to have the actual participation trophy of a degree, not an actual applied science position of a degree? Now, women more than men are more celebrated for that within the work environment. But when a man gets the same type of degree a woman gets, he's not as celebrated within the environment as a woman does. Because people expect men to actually go after things that are tangible. That's the actual thing.
As they should, right?
Yes, they should expect that.
They should expect that, and you should be out there doing tangible stuff 100%. Shout out to W. Alfonso, says, I'm going to catch the replay. Thank you very much for that. Equivalent to $5 super chat. You shorted us 1 cent there, but you still get a round of applause. Thank you very much. Now, one of the things that okay, before I go there, okay, let's wrap up the business aspect of things. Not wrapping it up per se, but let's wrap up that question when I was saying, okay, somebody came to you and they said, how do I start a transportation company? Okay, if I recall, you're like, okay, well, you invested in this thing. Okay, you're gonna go through and work and learn and understand, be an operator, and then shift to an owner operator. I could give you a step-by-step process. Are you the kind of person that can follow those steps and so on and so forth? Well, let me ask you to close it out. If you could summarize, what are some of the big mistakes that one makes? You mentioned certain things such as the warranty mistake, the having different types of trucks mistake, and so on. For example, you also said, don't go for the service contract, go for the parts contract. What are some of the obstacles, if you will, generally speaking, in the transportation industry? And would you say it's an easy, and I don't mean, let me rephrase that. Is it simple as
It is
opposed
simple.
to, okay, so it's not, oh, I want to be the best brain surgeon, and I'm going to open this best brain surgery operations. Like, that's too many variables. Okay, so you say it's simple. What are some other, shall we say, landmines in the way for somebody that's out there thinking now, I want to go in the transportation sector? What are some of the big picture landmines?
Personal life. That's the only thing that sinks everybody's personal.
Hmm.
This is an actual lifestyle. Benefiting off of this stuff after a while is an actual lifestyle. You're not going to trade one end for the other. You're never going to do that.
Hmm. Gotcha. There's that quote by our famous, people like to pull this guy up all the time. Thomas Sowell is probably one of the most quoted people in the world, especially amongst black people. It's talking about, there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs, right? There is no work-life balance. There's only choices, and these choices have consequences. There are work-life choices and work-life consequences, right? You can't be like, oh, I want to be this truck operator person, blah, blah, blah. I want to be this 16-hour a day working high value man. And also, I'm going to have all the other options and everything. I'm going to have dinner every night with my family, that kind of a thing. Like, no, that's foolish. What universe are you living in? Okay. That's not the universe the way it is. Plus, I always use the example of like the farmer back in the day. Like, go back 300 years and ask a farmer what his work-life balance was. When does his farm life start and when does his other life end? Like, what the hell are you talking about? That work-life balance thing is very much a modern phenomenon where you're supposed to now create this separation and now manage these two things. There's just life. There's just life. The idea that you're going to create a separation, I keep my cubicle over here, and then I do this other thing over there. It's like, that's a way to just be mediocre. And if you want to be mediocre at best, then go ahead and follow that kind of a pattern. But if you have a goal, a drive, if you want to be that kind of a person for whom success is not even an option, it's not negotiable, I'm just going to keep on pushing and pushing and pushing, you cannot be making these artificial separations between, oh, there is the work and then there is the life. Your life is all encompassing, right? And you should give 100% to everything, right? It doesn't mean you're going to be there every time for both your work or your family or whatever, but you are treating it with 100%, giving it 100% still. Okay, now, one more question about that. Let me ask you this: any skills or lessons that you learned from your previous endeavors? Okay, you went into the IT sector. Okay, you mentioned working okay. You have military, you got the IT thing. I don't know where the federal government working falls in that timeline, but you've learned several things. What were those lessons that you brought into running your company, right? What are things that you've learned from your previous endeavors, and how did you bring them into your current transportation business?
Maintaining relationships and being straightforward and straight honest.
Ah,
That's simple.
maintaining relationships.
Yes. Maintaining the type of relationship that you would want. So there's a lot of dishonest people in this industry, far too many. But I'm so straightforward that I nearly eliminate all those types of problems because I have checks and balances that I don't actually bend for anybody. And a lot of people want to do that because they actually survive in a broken environment. I don't want to learn how to survive within a broken environment. I don't think that that's key to my survival. It's okay for me to learn all the things that are wrong with broken environments, but never do I want to learn everything about a broken environment to engage in it. I learn everything about a broken environment to protect myself from that type of thinking myself. That's why I learn everything about those things. I have a far more expansive knowledge of how things can go wrong that people can never imagine. However, I would never try to actually exercise the type of system within my own personal life because it don't fit.
Can you help the people out with the benefits of maintaining those relationships?
Yeah,
Or, yeah, just a couple of nuggets.
correct. Because you're supposed to be able to give people some type of value outside the business that you actually provide them. They're not there for you with the business. They can get that type of relationship from anybody, but not everybody can bring value outside of that business relationship in
Hmm.
other areas of life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 100%. Now, something, would you say you're a political person? Would you
Yeah,
say that you are a political person?
yes, I have
Have
to
you?
know everything about the process if I'm going to benefit or even know what's going on in the actual environment. Yes, you have to. There's no such thing as not being a political person. I think it was Plato or Aristotle said that just because you stop taking an interest in politics, that don't mean that politics stop taking an interest in you.
Mm, 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 mm. So, yes, definitely 100%. Yeah, Aristotle. Man is a political animal after all. You're within the soup, whether you think you're not there or not. So being able to think, okay, the environment, policies, and so on and so forth. Because one thing that I think that you're a very pragmatic person. That's one of the things that kind of strikes me about you and your channel, right? So pragmatism. What do I mean by that? Like, for example, um, when it comes to politics, for example, you're very policy oriented, right? You're not
Yeah,
about what you call the culture.
yeah, warrior part. No need for it.
You don't do culture warrior stuff. You talk about outcomes, that will improve the outlook or the fortunes of your community, your particular cohort, your interest group, which maybe you, and then maybe you have some other sub interest, some other interest group that you, let's say it's black men or something like that, and
Yeah,
you're out for outcomes and policies. You say, I organize in Denver with the Democratic Party. It
yeah.
works for my outcomes. If you're in
Mhm.
Mississippi, you go organize with the Republican Party. I don't have beef with you. I'm not going to be arguing over, oh, you should be this or you should be that. It's about the outcomes. Now, is this something that you've always been like, this kind of pragmatism? Because generally speaking, the people who blab about politics generally, they tend not to be number one educated about the policies. They don't even know what C-SPAN is, right? Where they can watch, the House and the Senate, and then some other things, and then book TV on the weekends and blah blah blah. In other words, understanding policy, understanding outcomes, and is this something that you have always? Is that a way that you've always been in terms of pragmatic politics, or did you transition into that in a certain way?
No, I mean, because once you're part of the defense industry, has been in the military, yeah, you're going to want to know what the hell's going on and what group of people want to start wars versus what group of people isn't. And I thought I was one thing until the very real world consequences showed me that I was quite another. Because I was pretty much in a group because of the questions that I didn't ask. And once I started asking those very basic questions, I was over here in this other group when you started expecting answers to the actual question and stuff. I want to correct something. I'm not part of the Democratic Party in actual Mississippi, one of the worst areas in the country. I'm part of the same political party when it comes to no matter where I am in the country, unless I'm in Utah, Idaho, Montana, North, South Dakota, Montana, eastern part of
Hmm.
Washington. Then I'll be part of the Republican Party. New Mexico, Western
Hmm.
Colorado. That type of conservatism I can deal with because it's actually more libertarian than it is actual Southern conservative based.
Hmm. So libertarian, right? And just watching you and your channel and so on and so forth and your movements, if you will. Um, yeah, it makes sense. Libertarian. I don't see you as someone that's going to be like, oh, you people over there should be living this way. You're
Don't
like,
care.
I don't care. Um, so what is it about? So let me because I'm pragmatic too with politics. Politics is a knowledge game for me. For also, philosophy is really where I really like to be. And then if I go to politics, then it's about policy. And then if I'm just looking at, let's say if I'm watching C-SPAN, which I got hooked on a long time ago, then it's just to kind of see what's going on. Like I just want to know. I just want to know. But generally speaking, if I were to put my cards on the table, I'm more of a libertarian-esque type person. With some people may say that I have certain conservative values because I tend to believe in things such as, you are. Let me not overdefine it because that becomes wonky and weird. But there's something about people, okay, where it's like local politics, for example, is another kind of indication of your pragmatism, right? Which is, but there's something about people where it's like, rather than focus on local politics, that which is closest to them, that which can affect them, that arena in which they have the most agency, they can actually pull levers and make things happen tomorrow, right? They tend to want to either start screaming about culture, right? Oh, the decay of Western culture and how is this and that and the other, and then the LGBT people are coming for this or the da 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 da. Or every 4 years they come out and start screaming about presidential politics, which doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It doesn't affect you that much. Kamala Harris is it's not affecting your life, bro. That kind of stuff. So what is it, or what is your, come for them? What's going on with these kinds of people, right? Why will they not focus on the area where they have agency, which is when it's closer to you, you have agency. Where it's closer to you, things can be tailored more to the particulars of the environment. But rather they focus on things which they can't control and they just want to talk about.
Because weak men disgust me. People who are not actually invested in the actual process, but have all this idea that they're just going to culture war their way through it, disgust me. It actually belittles the actual situation down to making cheap points and not really being involved in any type of conversation. And just trying to attach themselves to these wedge issues as if they're actually invested in the actual outcome, when they're clearly not, because they don't care about the history of
it. So it is a sign of weakness, is what is implied by your statement. That
it is.
They don't want to do work, right?
And
they don't want to. Okay, yeah. Shout out to Jordan Peterson. Clean up your room, right? It's like, dude, bring things closer. Like, and that's the important thing about this whole track record thing. When you hear people talk, okay, they may be giving you advice or so on and so forth. Look at what they have done with their lives, okay? Because you have some people, you look down at their shoes are unlaced, but they have like 10 books about how other people should be lacing their shoes and stuff like that. So what is their track record of shoelacing? Because there is something about doing that makes people talk less. Now, before I give my own kind of a talk about that, first of all, do you think that's true? Because the people who say, people who do talk, do you think it's true that people who actually do things actively tend to talk less? And what do you think is going on there? Why is that true? You say, yeah, these people are weak. That's why they don't want to go to their local politics and deal with stuff, because you actually have to do stuff. But what is it about doing that makes people shut up?
Because actually doing is a very simple process. Maintaining ignorance is actually very time-consuming and expensive process.
I've never heard that one. Maintaining ignorance is very time-consuming. Go on. I love it.
Yeah, it's very like you can simply learn about a process, or you can argue culture and let the process pass you by, and you keep missing the same simplistic point over and over again. Like, it takes a lot of work to maintain issues that you can attach to the actual culture war itself, rather than get down to the actual policies, which are simplistic to discuss. There's only like 10 or 12 policies on both sides. That it is. It's not even that hard. But going after all of these stories as if Black Lives Matter is the only lobbying firm within America that you talk about, because you don't know how lobbying works, and you really understand that you're only interested in it because they're fighting against status quo, but you're not actually understanding the actual topics that you can change yourself, that can actually really affect you. It's just lazy and ridiculous and stupid. And there's something that we don't need to be engaging in. And then they have the nerve to turn around at groups who are participating in the political conversation, like Latinos and Asians. They're not out here
Mm-hmm.
online engaging in this culture warrior nonsense. They're not. You may seem like the people are, but they're not discussing this stuff because they're already invested within the environment because they face consequences when they're not invested. Black people face those same type of things. This is why you don't have conservative Arabs focused on liberal Arab women. That's not something that you see. You don't have Asians who are culturally conservative worried about liberal Arab women or Asian women who don't want to be a part of their culture. It's not even a thing. This is why we're looking for a failed man to actually lead us because we're looking for comfort. We're not looking for answers. We're looking for comfort in stagnation and ignorance, which is pretty expensive to maintain, very time consuming, where you can learn about the actual issues itself, which is very simple. There's nothing wrong with these people learning the actual lyrics to the next mumble rap. They do that over and over again. But learn about a specific process that you can actually benefit from, they don't do. And then they have the nerve to ask people about reparations when every other culture have got their stuff together on a productivity front and they still have to fight for reparations. People want the actual recipients of reparations without following the process and without even being invested in the actual outcomes of it. So that's why these things don't work that well, because there's a specific input, process, outcome. Their actual thing is ignore, find a new person to actually satiate my hunger for emotional security. Emotional security is the opposite of tangible outcome. One takes a level of investment and competence, and one only takes following. It's really not that difficult, but when you look at people who break the actual concept, and you have people who consistently host these people onto panels when they actually have no investment. The only thing they want to do is firebomb the conversation with ignorance. Because if the actual environment went on and actually succeeded, they wouldn't have a place. So they maintain a place with enough failed, broken output men and women as unreasonably possible. No other society does this, except for the one that's at the bottom of the system, us. Or us, I am part of that, but us in a higher level, me in a very significant smaller level.
Gotcha. Put quite a few things there. I want to reiterate a couple of them. You're saying, okay, these people are complaining about Black Lives Matter, for example, but they don't contribute to Black Lives Matter, nor do they contribute to anything else, right? They don't have some kind of counter organization that that they don't. Black Lives Matter does not represent them, but why do they care? Black Lives Matter is not the only lobbying group that's out there, so why do you keep on focusing on crap that doesn't matter?
Yes.
This idea of emotion, so takes a lot of talk and so on and so forth to keep on stoking your emotions and bathing and wallowing, whatever crap that thing is, as opposed to, well, I have a process. I started this organization and we're fighting for blah, blah, blah. And in about the next election cycle, we're going to have this bill in front of us. It doesn't take much to say that. It's about 2 paragraphs. And then now you're waiting for the thing to happen, right? But when you're not actually doing anything, you have to talk a lot. Quite interesting. Now, there's something else too. It's adjacent to it, and then I'll move it along. Adjacent to the fact of, or under the umbrella of the fact that people who do talk less is when you actually do something, you understand that you don't really have much knowledge to transfer over. In other words, one aspect of it is this. A lot of doing is like riding a bicycle. It's like, if you've actually ridden a bicycle, you can't sit around talking about how to ride a bicycle for that long, because at some point you just be like, dude, you got to ride it. I can't teach you how to ride a bicycle. And many things like that have this muscle memory aspect to them, where it's like, whether it's running the business or blah, 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 if I'm actually doing it, and when I've actually faced all the difficulties, the set of circumstances that I have to overcome, all the hurdles, it's like, I can't tell you, I can't teach you, I can't keep on talking about it forever. There's nothing to say. However, there's that Dunning-Kruger effect where people just have a little bit of knowledge, and they say a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. and they talk and talk and talk and talk and talk because they don't really actually know how things work. Because when
Correct.
you actually start doing things, you realize you don't have much to say. So I think it's actually quite a that's a good thing that you mentioned there. And then let me ask you to dig down more into, and let me meanwhile look at the okay, 7:29, probably winding up, and thank you very much for your time. I know your time is very valuable. Let's dig down into that whole thing about, you said reparations and then productivity, let's say, to roughly create that demarcation where it's like people are asking for reparations, but they have not demonstrated their ability to be productive. In other words, it's just like you go to the bank and you're asking for a loan, and they're like, dude, where's your record, your track record? Nice that it came back to that, of actually being productive. Where is that pipeline, as we talked about earlier? Well, how much are you pulling from the market? In other words, the world gives to people whom can demonstrate mastery, right? So not only because you actually have leverage, number one, but people tend not want to give stuff. Okay, the Peter chapter 25, whatever it is, it's in a couple of places in the Bible where it says, for those whom have, more shall be given unto them, and they shall have abundance. And for those who do not have, even the little that they do have will be taken away. We see this over and over and over again. Whether it is, getting women or whatever, if you're out there desperate for them, you're not gonna get them, right? It's when you're like, I don't, when it's an abundance for you where it doesn't even freaking matter. That's when you get stuff. You get opportunity. The more you're successful you've become, the more people throw opportunities at you. Where you have to even be like, you know what? I can't. You have to turn down opportunities because you've demonstrated your ability to be successful. So can you drill down a little bit more on that thing whereby people are out there trying to look for something from somebody, right? But they don't understand that you're more likely to get it if you can independently show that you are capable of getting it with or without help.
I mean, it's the whole benefit without engagement type thing, or that in order for you to practice your own civic duty as a person, they're going to make everything fair for you to actually to participate, when that's never been the actual struggle of anybody within this country. Again, it all goes back to history, track record, personal involvement, and actual things that you actually do for yourself. Most of it, which is not conservative, by the way. It's pretty human to have growth within an environment by itself. Because I can tell you, there's many liberal cities that they could point to, the Chicagos, the Baltimores. I can really go to conservative ran state who have just as many problems when they're conservative ran. So it's still down to the individual, the family makeup, the process, that over the type of leadership that's there. It still comes down to policy. Like if the policy was based around nobody gets welfare until they get straight A students, guess what you would have? An abundance of straight A students in order to get welfare. Like if you actually gave welfare to actually people who are actually going to school for actual tangible things, because the government should invest within its people to get a specific outcome. People who actually have free education that's not based on bullshit and sociology, psychology, if you're not going to a psychologist, like pretty much tangible things that lead to an actual tangible outcome, they actually need it. That type of investment is actually needed to get something out of it. Because there's a difference between how New York looks, how California looks, and how Mississippi and how West Virginia looks. The other two people have high taxation, high levels of productivity. The other two places have very low taxation and no personal investment and no type of tangible outcome. This isn't something that you have to teach to people. This is have to be taught, forced to be taught to people how to invest within the process itself. Australia would look like a very different place if it wasn't forced participation. Look like an extremely different place without forced participation. And a lot of people here, they take freedom as freedom to not actually know how things work, but have this political, stupid idea of just walking in a conversation and trolling. That's the actual idea of being part of an actual conversation. And then you have the idiots who actually have these conversations, who have these individuals up, who have to take all individual inputs as valid. When you know damn well they wouldn't invite a 5-year-old to give a cancer diagnosis to any one of their actual family members, if it actually came down to that. All inputs are not equal. All outputs should be known as equal. And if you allow people who are not invested to actually sit at the table where people are actually invested, the only thing you're going to actually encourage is non-investment and slowing down the conversation about progress itself. because everybody don't benefit from progress in that scenario. But in my scenario, everybody benefits from progress. In their scenario, most people benefit from chaos, except for those who don't benefit from productivity. That's why they are where they are. The conversations are centered around where they're at. Because remember, this environment has a whole lot of failure attached to it, a whole lot of worship in the things that don't matter attached to it, a whole lot of nonsensical digital twerking associated. There's no real investment when it comes to men because most of the men are trying to act women. So they think that being the girl's best friend is the very best thing.
I see. So you said something there about forced participation. I had asked a question earlier about how one is able to perhaps inculcate in a society writ large, group type dynamics, system type dynamics, this drive to succeed. So you think, for example, forced participation is a way to get that into more individuals or to have a system that reflects that ideal more?
Correct. I mean, it's cultural. It's either can be learned later on in life or it can be acculturated into life. Like it can be easily learned, it could be easily lost. How you see in some certain areas in America, especially people in the defense industry, by the way, where they have the parents who are super high performers, but they have kids that ain't nothing because they haven't worked for anything. They drive BMWs and Mercedes Benz and all this kind of stuff, and they got everything else that you could possibly want as a child. So what are they going to do as an adult? You already taught them that an adult is based on already made it already. So that's why those people have those problems in that society. So they just think, I can just feed my kids more and more expensive things, and that way they'll get tangible outcomes, when that's the wrong thing to get. No forced participation. Realistic participation. Like other groups of people actually force their kids to actually study a hell of a lot more than it takes to get by within the environment itself as a level of forced participation. It's environmental, it is cultural, it is passed down that way. If you have to learn that on your own, you're not, especially within a culture that doesn't reward that, by the way. Nobody likes smart people with it. The only thing that matters is how much sexual output that you claim to get, not actually tangibly demonstrated. And that's what people actually go towards, because that's easy to do, is act like that you're sexually compromised rather than live the hard ass life with your sexual compromise. Because that's a cultural output that is respected on. So if you can act like the output without the actual things that you invest, you actually are not going to benefit from it, just like the other person isn't benefiting from it. That's why nobody is winning within this environment when it comes to women, because you give them everything that they want up front and claiming victory. Once you've done that, you can't do anything like that anywhere else. That's not how negotiations work. But they think by having these endless conversations about that, it's going to bring them back to the table. The only thing they're going to do is push the table further and further away from where you can sit at. It's a simple process.
Yeah, 100%. And then expecting people to come back to the table after you've given them everything. It's good stuff. So last question / final thoughts is, and the reason it's the last question because I know that it's already been kind of covered, generally speaking, in our talk, right? The kinds of people that one needs to exclude from one circle, right? And the kind of people that one needs to include in one circle in order to, maximize the possibility of achieving one's goals. People can be teachers of good and bad. They can inspire in good ways, or they can be, throwing wet, what's the phrase, wet blankets on things and raining on your parade and so on and so forth. People can be collaborators whereby, they've demonstrated and shown their track record of being successful, productive, having value, and then you can exchange value for value. Those relationships which you need to maintain, which you said is very vital. Also, people can be customers, right? That kind of a thing. So just your last overarching talk, if you will, to close us out about that which must be excluded vis-a-vis people and that which must be included and maintained in order to maximize one's chances of achieving one's goals?
For me, for women, all the wildest women who don't know how to pick men, and actual men who don't know how to pick women. Because those
Women who don't know how to pick men and men who don't know how to pick women, exclude those. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
yes, because both of the actual sides of the equation that don't know how to pick one another don't care about what they create. Those people who are actually more equally yoked within the environment itself have a cultural run up to where they actually know what they want to create. So you got a whole lot of people who want to benefit without the actual process of creation. They want biology to determine the misuse of it, by the way, to determine the actual factor of them having an outcome. The woman is actually being a mother without the skills. The actual guy is the father, actually just being able to spread a seed to actually be a father. Neither one of them want to actually do that together. But if both people have the weekend P word mindset, that's what our society is actually based on. And the fact is that we created an entire culture centered around actually protecting the mismanagement of very basic sexual faculties, actual success rate of the actual environment itself. This is why people can disagree all they want. They can turn off the live stream all they want. Fine. Do a live stream and refute everything that I say, word for word. Never seen it. Never have seen it. I have seen people who, on the other hand, pull up my live stream, take things out of context. That's the culture warrior type of thing, because, the unsuccessful man shall lead, and then their actual stead, it doesn't work. There's no actual outcome that's actually based on that. It's very easy. But it doesn't create the actual results that you actually want to move forward as a society. There's a multiplier effect of success or failure. There are actual consequences and benefits to success or failure as a group. If you're not investing in the proper things to get the proper output, you're going to actually have a group of failure. If you plant peanuts and you expect watermelons, that's not supposed to be a level of thing that you're supposed to expect. You're only going to get what you invest, even if it's nothing.
100% MOT. I think that is a very good way to put it. It's because people forget the importance of that fundamental relationship. People in a misguided way focus on that thing, but there's a actual way to pinpoint the importance of men that can pick women and women that can pick men. Perhaps even more, especially women that can pick men, because we know how sexual selection works. And why is it so important? Well, because, if you don't put the right inputs, as you said, right, what are the outputs you're going to get? Children whom neither of these people wanted, and therefore a society, the next generation, that is screwed up, messed up, and everything is effed up from that perspective moving forward. That is why it's important, okay? That is the right perspective to take. That is the right way to look at its importance. So shout out to MOT, shout out to MOT, shout out to you guys in the chat, shout out to Yeduru talking about whatever crazy stuff he's always talking about in the chat. Shout out to K Polymath, and to all those whom gave a super chat. Aizen Sama, I believe. Snuggles, always representing. Shout out to D in the house. Shout out to Xanatos Clutch. Shout out to Felicia in the house. We are out. I'm going to go ahead and play my little outro thing. It's about 2 minutes long, and then we will catch you guys on the other side. And by the way, tomorrow is Tuesday, and I'm going to be here with Dr. Thunder. You guys know how we do it, getting ish done with Dr. Thunder. We're going to be back talking about how to get things done. We're going to continue our conversation on leverage, how to get it, how to use it, the different kinds of leverage, and so on and so forth in a very practical, simple, measurable, actionable way. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to continue that my stream with Joan about we take content out there from the mainstream, content from the popular content, and then we break it down. We look at it like, okay, what the hell are these people watching? What are they talking about? What's really going on here? And glad to always have the support. Thanks again, MOT. I see that your link has been dropped. Most people probably already subscribed to you. If you're not subscribed to Man of Tomorrow, go ahead and type in Man of Tomorrow. Go and look up, if you're watching the video in the replay, I'm going to go ahead and leave it in the comment section, his link that is, and then also it was dropped by Doug and some other moderators, I believe, before in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. So I am now going to go ahead and take us out, and we shall see you again tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. Peace.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what was behind the curtain, the face of evil smirking with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, could either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.